Thanks, guys. Great to be here. So, yeah, after decades of hurting and handicapping children and producing reading disabilities using quackery in the classroom to teach reading, a school district in Texas has finally decided to do the right thing and turn to phonics. So, very good news, obviously, for children going forward. Lots of praise from advocates of sensible teaching of reading, but not a whole lot of calls for accountability because I mean they're kind of admitting here that whoops, we screwed up decades worth of kids here, and nobody's saying wait a minute here, you screwed up decades worth of kids. So this new phonics program that they're going to bring in will replace the whole language quackery. And it's going to be starting this year in Midland ISD. That's Midland Independent School District down in Texas. Like the rest of the country, they were suffering from catastrophic levels of reading failure. Less than one half of third graders were actually able to read at a proficient level. That's according to their own standardized test. And this new associate superintendent of teaching and learning came in, Ashley Osborne, and I don't know much about her other than that she's new and that she likes phonics, so that's a good thing. So she came in and said, "We have got to change this. We've got to follow what she and others describe as the science of reading, which used to just be called reading." And she's got a lot of good things to say. I'm actually fairly impressed here. She says, "For us, there's no debate. Students deserve the best instruction possible. And when it comes to reading instruction, particularly for our youngest learners, phonics is the most effective method, according to the vast body of research available." I'd offer a little correction there. It's not the most effective method. It is the only method. Teaching kids to memorize words is not actually teaching them to read. It's teaching them to memorize words. So even if they're really smart and they can memorize a few hundred or even a few thousand, they're not reading. They're just memorizing words, which is, of course, what children in this district and across the rest of the United States in government schools have been doing for decades now. She goes on to say that phonics breaks down not only the word, but also the intellect letter sounds and how we blend those letter sounds. Now, of course, you guys know if you've been watching this program for a while, I've been harping on this for at least a decade, and many before me have been doing it for a lot longer. But as you know, English has a phonetic writing system. In other words, each letter represents one or more sounds. And obviously, if you want to learn how to read, you have to know what those sounds are and what those symbols represent. So a P represents a P sound, right? Pretty simple stuff. And so we have a phonetic writing system. And so if you want to learn how to read properly, you have to learn phonics. And yet, for almost a century now, government schools all across the United States have basically been teaching children to memorize whole words as if the words themselves were symbols rather than a collection of symbols. Now, experts have been sounding the alarm about this literally since the mid-1800s when Horace Mann first introduced it into the government indoctrination centers he was setting up in Massachusetts. The Boston schoolmasters came out and said, "This is ridiculous. We're not doing this. That's enough." John Dewey, of course, resurrected it about 50 years later, turn of the century, and loved that it was producing illiteracy and dyslexia and thought, hey, let's do that all across America. So he and his cohorts at the University of Chicago and later at Teachers College at Columbia University got this quackery implemented in government schools all across America. Now, Osborne, who's been at Midland ISD for about half a year, according to news reports, has been leading the charge for this. She says reading is the foundation of all other learning. Literacy has a strong tie to success as adults. You think? Yeah, and what happened to the decades of kids who now are not going to have a strong tie as adults? Yeah, that's a good question. Strong tie to success. She says we want to ensure that all students are prepared and ready for college or career, and establishing solid literacy skills is a key component to realizing our mission. Wow. Yep. No kidding. She also pointed out that the only way to really do that is through phonics. She says in those primary grades, kinder, first, second, it's critical that our students have access to phonics-based approach so that they can gain those skills to be able to decode and encode words and to be able to put those together and actually read. So kudos to Miss Osborne. She is exactly correct. Now, one of the another person down there, Andrea Messick, executive director of teaching and learning. She came out and also supported this. She said that students who were damaged by the previous, she didn't put it that way, the students who were damaged by the previous quackery would get some remedial instructions. So she says that older students who were taught via the whole language method are included in the phonics curriculum. That's why we're implementing a suite of methods that teaches children phonics from the outset, catches any students who didn't have phonics in their primary years. Well, thank you. But what about the students who are now 18, 19, 20, 21, 25? I would like to know. She goes on to say, this Andrea does, that a student who can't read will fail in other content areas. You think? By moving to a phonics-based curriculum, we're confident students will see a lift as a whole academically. Wow, duh, right? If you can actually read your science and your history textbooks, you might get a better grade. Imagine that. Folks, this is incredible. It's good news, obviously, that students and districts across the country are moving toward phonics. Obviously, this is sorely needed, but this quackery, folks, is not teaching reading. In fact, it's doing the opposite. It's leaving children permanently disabled and unable to ever learn how to read properly. And so it's good that we're shifting. I mean, that's important. But what about accountability for the millions of Americans whose lives have now been rendered very difficult because they cannot read? I would say we really need some accountability here. Whose idea was this? We need an investigation. Who thought it would be a good idea to teach children this quackery? Even more stunning, to me at least, is that any parent with any sense would continue to trust these government indoctrination centers to educate their children, right? They're admitting now that for generations they've been dumbing down your children with quackery that doesn't work to teach reading, and you're still going to trust them with your kids? Folks, give me a break. It's time for accountability and real investigations into what happened here to make sure it never happens again. Thanks, guys.